Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Smith, and for my Keystone presentation, I created an augmented reality climbing wall. I am a computer engineering student here at BU, so this kind of served as my senior engineering capstone project. I did it with three other guys, Tom, Michael, and Taylor, and we created this for our client, Dr. Ken Sebesta, who's an engineering professor here at BU. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with augmented reality, but before I start, I kind of wanted to provide some background. Augmented reality is the digital world meets real elements. So there's no headset, there's no overburdensome equipment, but it's just a real world object with some kind of digital or virtual thing overlaid on top of it. So in this picture right here, that is an augmented reality climbing wall. These two guys are playing Pong on it right now, but how it's done is that the game is projected on just a regular climbing wall, and it uses skeletal tracking to track where they are and adjust the game accordingly. So that's how it's done currently. However, it can be a little problematic at times. As augmented reality climbing walls have become more popular over the years, the equipment has kind of stayed the same. So it's a bit outdated and can be a bit inconsistent at times, especially the skeletal tracking, such as if you're on the wall and you're grabbing a hold that's right in front of you, your body's kind of in the way of the skeletal tracking, so it kind of loses you and it doesn't adjust the game, and it leads to an unreliable and sort of unsatisfactory gaming experience. So for our project, that was kind of our goal. It was to create an enhanced augmented reality system that outperforms these what's called the single sensor solution. So it's these augmented reality climbing walls that rely solely on skeletal tracking. So we were trying to make an augmented reality wall that provided a better experience. And how we went about doing that is by mainly creating these active pressure sensors that attach to the climbing holds and can read where the person is on the wall, as well as developing some cool AR games to play, because what use is a climbing wall if you don't have any fun games to play. This is sort of the scope of our project. We were given the project last fall, and we spent the first semester just kind of brainstorming, researching, initially designing the sensors, which I'll go into later. Then the second semester, we're just kind of putting it all together, putting the system together. And then the last month was deployment, so the customer installation, actually getting the wall built and everything like that. So here is the picture of our project, sort of our system. As you can see, there's a climbing wall, and the holds, which is where the user grabs to hang onto the wall. In between that is the main part of our project, the sensors, which communicates behind the wall to this thing called a microcontroller, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's just think of like a laptop or like a computer, something that's processing the game and communicating with the projector that displays the game onto the wall. Like I said, the sensor is sort of the main part of our project, so we spent a lot of time workshopping different designs for them. One thing that we always wanted to do was make it scalable, so make sure that it worked with every single wall and every single hold, that they didn't have to construct a whole new wall and hold just for augmented reality. So how we designed it was kind of like a washer, so you can fasten it between the hold and the wall, and the bolt just kind of travels right through it. So it just goes in between there. On the top of it is a button, which when the user grabs the hold, their hand will press the button, which is then sends to our system, and that's how we know where the person is on the wall and which sensor they're pressing. You can see in our first prototype in the middle, we started by using just a 9-volt battery to power it, to give it charge. Obviously, it's a little bulky, kind of hard to grab, gets in the way. So we ended up, for our final design on the far right, just going with wireless power, passing it back from the back of the wall to the front and sending the data the other way. So yeah, and the other part of our project is the game software. Since we were creating this new entire way to do AR climbing walls from scratch, there weren't a lot of games out there that could be played with it. So that was also something that we had to focus on. We created 2 games. First is called Missile Launch. You just kind of hang on the wall, missiles fall from the sky, and you got to dodge them. It's pretty straightforward. But about halfway through this semester, we learned that we couldn't actually build a full-scale wall for safety reasons from BU. So we had to pivot a little bit, and so we created this second game called Simon. It's based off a children's game of the same name, where holds will light up on the wall, and the user just has to grab onto the holds in the same specific order. And every time they do it, there's one more that's added, so it's like a memory game. But yeah, so once we developed those two things, the sensors and the games, it kind of fell to putting it all together. How we connected those two was starting with the sensors, writing this sort of matrix of zeros and ones that you can see in the bottom, writing that to a text file, 0 if the sensor is not pressed, 1 if the sensor is pressed. And the game then takes that text file and reads that text file and creates a virtual wall within the game. So it's reading these zeros and ones. It sees that there's 9 zeros in this text file. It creates these little white hold objects in the game, and it continually reads these, and depending on when it's pressed, the 1 appears. When it's not pressed, 0 appears, and adjusts the game accordingly that way. So once that was all sort of put together and finalized, we then moved to initial prototype testing. For just the initial prototype, it was 2 climbing holds, which you can kind of guess that the game was not as fun and complex if there's only 2. But we brought in a ton of professors and a ton of teaching assistants to kind of practice and test it out for us. And they played the game Simon, and it was very successful. We were very happy with how the sensors performed and the game performed. It was very error-free and provided that sort of smooth gaming experience that we were looking towards. However, for the final product, we were able to scale it up to 9 holds, which you can see in this sweet pic right here. So we were able to scale it up to 9 holds, so the game's a little bit fun, a little bit more complex. But yeah, overall, we were very happy with the performance of our project. We felt like it was very much a success and that we were able to accomplish all the goals that we set forth. We proved that by creating these sensor attachments that you can have a smooth augmented reality gaming experience on a climbing wall, that you can either couple it with skeletal tracking or just do it by itself, sort of rendering skeletal tracking no longer necessary. If you want to actually play the wall, next Friday is the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department does their ECE Day, where it's just like an open house, kind of science fair style, where you can walk around and talk to all the senior design teams. And my team and I will be there with our wall. So if you want to try and beat my high score in Simon, which you probably won't, but you can come and see us then. So thank you very much, and I will take questions.
When you were doing your research, did you get to climb an augmented wall?
Yeah, so there is one at level 99, which is right outside of Boston. I don't know if everyone's familiar with it, but that was sort of the wall that we were trying to beat, that we were trying to outperform. So that was sort of the first thing that we did, is we went to level 99, played that wall, spent like 2 hours watching people play that wall, which we looked a little creepy, honestly. But it was it was fun seeing how they do it, seeing this sort of, as I talked about, that single sensor skeletal tracking system. I was pretty awful at it, but yeah, that definitely started the sort of gears turning of, okay, this is how they do it. How do we see problems with it, and what can we do to better it?
Great job, Ryan. We are all going to beat your high Simon score next week. So obviously, this is geared towards a particular application around an augmented reality climbing wall, but I'm really wondering about the possible extended applications of improved skeletal tracking. And so I wonder whether you have thought about other ways in which the particular ways you've been able to identify that beyond a climbing wall, skeletal tracking, where can it go next? And how can it be used in maybe non-gaming applications?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Right now, skeletal tracking is used a lot in gaming. It started with the Microsoft Kinect, things like that. I know there's a startup right now that uses skeletal tracking to help with like form at the gym. So like you put in what workout you're doing, and it kind of tracks your form, tells you, hey, you might injure yourself this way, just by doing that. So it's a very exciting sort of industry that's continuing to move forward in that way, sort of non-gaming. Mm-hmm.
Great presentation. So as this potential avenue for gaming matures, what additional functionality could you see implementing into a augmented reality rock wall or something similar?
Mm-hmm. No, it's a good question. I think I'm really excited about pairing the skeletal tracking with the sensors. I mean, we did kind of prove that you don't need fully to have the skeletal tracking once you have the sensors, but sort of having the two there provides a more grounded and like a more reliable system. So I think finding some way that the two can kind of coexist would be definitely initial next steps. But yeah.
Congratulations, Ryan.
Thanks so much.
So as you move on to like integrating the two and having some redundancy from a two-sensor system, do you have any thoughts on how you would delegate between the two if they're not in agreement with one another?
Yeah. There's definitely needs to be sort of a hierarchy of it, like when they put out contradicting outputs, which one is more reliable. And right now, I think definitely the sensors are a little bit more reliable because you're hands-on with the holds. And like I said before, skeletal tracking has definitely its limitations, but I think having the sensors with the skeletal tracking, with sensors being more the priority. I mean, I'm a little bit biased, but I definitely think that would be the way to go. Thank you very much.